Hello and welcome to another episode of GameHammer Daily. I am Zoe Kirk Robinson, and I will be your guide as we look into the world of Space Invaders and ask, how do you make a sequel to such a classic game? Few game sequels ever managed to surpass the original, and Space Invaders Part II is no exception. The thing is, it's almost set up to fail by design. How can you make a sequel to Space Invaders? The game is an absolute classic that created an entire genre. How could anything follow that? It's a fair question, I'm sure you'll agree, and I'm sure it took Taito all of 5 minutes to decide that the best way to make a sequel, a concept that was pretty much non-existent in gaming at the time that this was done, was to make the game a little bit harder, add some colour, and slap a Part 2 label on the title screen. Job done, right? Well, no, but like it or not, that is what we essentially got. Space Invaders Part 2 is a slightly more difficult game with some colour. It arrived the year after the original game had debuted to compete against the flurry of Space Invaders clones that hit the market after the original began gathering up more coins than Mario. Of course, the new colours and a slightly harder game weren't the only additions. There's also an attract mode this time around, which made the game look more like the arcades that we've all come to know and love over the years. There was also an intermission between rounds, something that Pac-Man would become famous for, but Space Invaders Part II did it first. You could also add your name if you made it to the top of the high score table, which helped to vastly increase the amount of street cred that a young nerd could gain at the local arcade. So yeah, all in all, it wasn't a bad update. It's not great, and it certainly doesn't do enough to warrant being a sequel, but at the end of the day, it is more Space Invaders, and that can't be a bad thing, right? Well, yes and no. As early arcade games go, and do remember that this is still an arcade game from the 70s here, so it really is early, it's a pretty decent game. The colours do look nice, and the gameplay is still here from the original, but what really struck me when playing the game was how slow your tank moves. The thing actually crawls across the screen. Now, I'm used to playing Space Invaders clones where the tank moves really quickly, so you can dodge and weave in order to find the best position to attack your enemy, but you really can't do that here. In Space Invaders, it's all about knowing where to sit and when to strike. You can't rely on speed and maneuverability to adjust your game plan on the fly. When it comes back to these original genre-defining games, it's very easy to forget that. Secondly, the colours, while nice to have there, actually do take away from the purity of the original game's visuals. It's a weird thing to say, isn't it? I've already said the colours are nice, but it's true. The enemies don't blend into the black background, but they also don't stand out quite as sharply as they did in the original. So the game isn't visually as appealing. It's a rare example of where a game adding colour actually makes it less good. The original images strike quite a contrast, so adding colour detracts a little, and it's just, maybe it's me, but it's just there and I have to say it. But with all that said and done, this is still Space Invaders at its core, and if you enjoyed the first game but feel it's not enough of a challenge as it used to be, then this is the version to step up to. It's just as fun, only a little bit harder this time around. So people who enjoy Space Invaders, they will enjoy this version. It's effectively a mission-packed sequel that notches up the difficulty a bit. It's not hard enough to put off newcomers, but it's enough to make those who've been playing the original game since it first came out feel like this one is more a challenge on their level. If you don't enjoy Space Invaders, or were looking for something that was a little more interesting for a sequel, you won't find anything to your liking here. The added extras just aren't enough to keep your attention, and you'd be better off with something like Galaxian or Galaga. But for those who actually do want some more Space Invaders, well, here it is. It's more Space Invaders. And you get exactly what it says on the title screen. Well, there you have it. It turns out that the way to make a sequel to Space Invaders is just to make more Space Invaders, but a little bit harder. Can't say they didn't stick with the formula. As the original Space Invaders went on, it got harder. So the sequel must just be a bit more hard. Well, I hope you enjoyed that anyway. It's an interesting game. Whether you like Space Invaders or not, it's certainly, well, it's noteworthy in the annals of history, isn't it? For gaming, anyway. But I'm not convinced it was the best move for Space Invaders to make another Space Invaders that's almost exactly the same, but perhaps I'm wrong. What do you think? Do you like it? Do you think they should have tried something a little bit different, or something completely different? Well, they did that with Galaga and Galaxian and everything, didn't they? So perhaps they could have made it work with Space Invaders. But that's how it is, that's what they went with, so that's what we get. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this. If you have, remember to click that like button. Ding! Share this video too with your friends so that they'll know a good game when they see it. And do subscribe for future videos because there will be more in the future. But until tomorrow, I've been Zoe Kirk Robinson, you've been watching GameHammer Daily, and I'll see you later. If you like the show, please consider supporting me on Patreon. It really does help create future videos. That's patreon.com/Zoe Kirk Robinson. And I've got an extra special thanks going out to Chief89, Sam Yates, Retro Mickey82, Mo Henry, and George Bortorini. Thank you so much, guys.